Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Clifford Stoun. I was a Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear surety. I could get the clearance that I needed to do whatever it was that was necessary for me to do at the time on special operations when I was called in on those. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. But the whole situation is, we've sat back, we've told the American people that there's no such thing as UFOs. I've been involved where we have recovered these objects. We know them to be of extraterrestrials. In 1969, I had an event that happened to me while I was stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia. We went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. That would be my first exposure to any time that we would be recovering an unidentified flying object. When we went there, we already had people that was already in the facility. We were a backup team, which was supposed to be NBC because there was supposed to be some nuclear materials that was on board this craft. Later on, most people involved were to be told that there was nothing on board it. It was nothing more than just a crash of one of our aircraft. I know better because I was one of the people that approached it with a Geiger counter to get surface readings. I was the first person to go ahead and see that there were bodies on it. That would be the first of approximately 12 events. UFO crashes are not events that take place every day. They're rare. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people. I stand before you today in my almighty God and I tell you this. If Congress calls me in and says, will you testify in detail what you know, I stand here today prepared and ready to do just that. Governments must never lie to the people for no reason. Thank you.
Decades ago.
A long time ago.
Okay, a long time ago. And then we start to talk, and I asked you, do you have time? And then you said, I'm retired and I have the whole time of the universe. I said, okay. And then we talked for a while outside. In the parking lot, and then we just came here in this library, and then we spent 2 or 3 hours, and I was in shock from everything I heard from you. I was prepared, and I knew that we're not alone in the universe, and I knew that there's UFOs and many other unexplainable stuff. They're still real, even if they're not explainable. Anyway, today we're very happy to have you again in UFO Disclosure, Bulgaria. That video will be in YouTube, and everybody can see it and thinking about this and talking, discussing these topics. But first of all, I would like to ask you about this statement of President Trump. He mentioned in the national TV that they're going to create new military forces like special space forces. And I think that maybe they already have that special space forces, but right now President Trump just tried to make it legal, maybe? What do you think?
Well, we already had the Space Force. We've had it for a long, long time. All the way back in the 50s they started it. The U.S. Army started what was called Project Orion in the mid to late 40s. And of course that was for us to get a lunar outpost put up on the moon by June of 1963. And by June of 1963, the Army expected to have a 12-man outpost there on the moon. Also, the United States Army is working on exotic weapons. And in 1960, they had a meeting there at Maryland, I think it was.
So Scott, I'm sorry that I'm interrupting you, but which president created that? Or maybe even president didn't know?
No, Eisenhower did know, and it started with Eisenhower.
So he knew?
He was well aware of it. Just like the NRO. The NRO, very few people knew of its existence, and it wouldn't be until 1992, 1994 timeframe that they officially acknowledged that the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Organization, existed. But, you know, inter-service rivalry is what really stopped the Army from moving forward, and would have surely have had a manned outpost on the moon by 1963, June of 1963. NASA came into play, the Air Force came into existence, the Air Force and NASA went together and said, look, anything to do with outer space, that's ours. And to make a long story short, once we really get this program fully off the ground and have it incorporated where it is a service, a standalone service, not a sister service, not like the Marine Corps being part of the Navy and all that good stuff. But when it finally gets to the point where we are having a truly active standalone program, we're going to find that it's going to be more along the lines of the U.S. Navy than any other branch of service.
So what is the job of this special space forces? What are they going to do? What they doing?
The Space Forces, very simply, are going to be geared to where if we find ourselves having to go ahead and fight in a conflict in space, they're going to be the ones to do it. Now that seems crazy, but you know, going all the way back to the end of the Second World War, the United States, the former Soviet states, prepared to fight a war in space, making exotic weapons to use in space. There was even a thought within military channels here in the U.S. and also the Soviet channels, thinking that, you know, it wasn't just a space race to see who gets to the moon first, to see who goes ahead and establishes a peaceful colony on the moon. We actually plan to go and claim territory. Now the U.S. want to go ahead and say, well, you know, we're not out there to try to claim territory. We're just going to be going out there for peaceful exploration. That's totally untrue. You know, that's the right thing to do, but that isn't what we had in mind. I'm sorry, if you're going out for peaceful exploration, you don't go ahead and have a research and development program in place to create weapons specifically designed to fight wars in space. And I can show you documentation where this is the case. And as a matter of fact, before you go back to Bulgaria, you need to have those documents in hand so you can show the people there, because they're not going to believe it otherwise. And I can show you documents. As a matter of fact, if you looked on my computer, there was a former top secret document that talks about the weapon systems that the Russians were working on in the late 50s, early 60s to fight a war in space, and even from space hit targets here on Earth using what we call orbital space platforms. And that document was secret, by the way, until February of this year, 2018.
Robert Salas, you know him.
Yes.
He mentioned in this press conference in Washington a long time ago, I mean, he testified about this during his duty and service in the Army. The missile weapon was shut down.
Yeah, actually he was in the Air Force.
In Air Force, okay. How that is possible?
We don't know, but it didn't just happen here in the U.S. he called a lot of flack because people, oh, he's lying, he's this, he's that. No. We had several locations. 75, we had the same thing happen again. Along the northern tier of the United States. Essentially every SAC base was visited by unidentified flying objects under intelligent control that we were powerless to do anything about it. We went ahead and said, oh, well, those are helicopters. Gee, we never arrested anybody for violation of the airspace in the areas where you have weapon stockpiles with nuclear weapons. It's a federal offense to fly over those. They will force you to land, and they will go ahead and question you. And in a lot of cases, depending on what really happened, you can face federal charges that sends you to a federal prison for years. Now, we had this go on in October, November of 75. I got the documentations to prove it. We had it happen in the 60s, in which Salas was involved in. And it wasn't just Salas that has come forth and talked about it. Salas has caught a lot of flack because he chose to talk about it. And the government's not going to come to your aid. And all this malarkey where early on they were saying here in the U.S., if military people started to come out and talk, they would have the backing of the media, and people would want to know more. No. UFOs are a self-keeping secret. Events still go on in which we have things that happen. The Soviet Union, former Soviet states, they went ahead and they had, in one instance, they had a missile site in which all their missiles, which they're already programmed for certain targets. Our missiles were programmed for certain targets. All of a sudden, their missiles started to go ahead and come on all by themselves, getting ready to launch. There was nothing that they could do to stop them from launching. Several seconds before they would go ahead and be airborne, going to targets located here in the United States that would set off World War III, as mysteriously as they started up, they shut down.
For what reason?
We don't know.
Maybe just to say, hey, this is us. We can do that.
I think that they want us to know that, they have, their technology is vastly superior to ours. And it's like, oh, you people want to blow yourselves up? Fine. Let's see how you really feel about it. And they want to show us that any time that they want to go ahead and launch our missiles, they could do it, and we would have no control or power over it. They don't understand wars. They don't understand why we have to go out and kill one another to go ahead and try to impose our will, our desires on other people. War is totally alien to them.
Or maybe they did because something was wrong with the system. And
well, let's go back to May of 1960, I think it was. Gary Francis Powers. The Russians did not shoot down that U-2. The U-2 overflights were bringing us to a brink of World War III. And we were in total denial. We would say these are nothing more than meteorological aircraft that kind of strayed several hundred miles across the border. But we had really great cameras at that time, taking really great pictures of the former Soviet Union, showing strategic pictures, which they tried to hide, but they didn't know when we'd be coming over. And of course, we were flying so high that none of the missiles that they had at the time could really bring that plane down, the U-2. They could not go ahead and shoot it down. They would scramble fighters. The fighters couldn't go that high to shoot it down. But nonetheless, in May of 1960, Powers was supposedly shot down. One of the best kept secrets of the Cold War was that the former Soviet Union did not shoot down that U-2. Something that we have no explanation for, even to this day. I have a documentation from the CIA to back me up on what I'm about to say. All of a sudden, that U-2 aircraft, spy plane, it was started to shiver, like it was falling apart. And when Powers looked out, all he saw was a bright orange yellowish glow. He couldn't see anything else out of the cockpit. And the plane actually started to disintegrate in parts. And whatever caused that glow, and to the finest technology we had at that time could explain it in only one way. There was a nuclear detonation. We know that didn't happen. So some outside force using technology that did not exist at that time, and to this day does not exist, brought that plane down. And I think that our visitors were responsible for that. I think the intent was, okay, look, it's no longer a question these planes might exist. It's no longer a question that they were really spying on the former Soviet Union. It was a real thing. It was really going on. That got us to start talking and got us to be more open in what we were trying to do. Got the Russians being more open. But see, we knew what happened. We went ahead, we won a court-martial Powers. And people didn't want to believe his story. They even believed Powers' wife was murdered by the U.S. government. You didn't know that, did you? The documents didn't come out until 2016, and some more in 2017. These were documents that have been classified for all this time. And a lot of it is still classified. But the whole situation is, by Powers' plane coming down, that was a great aid in stopping World War III before it happened accidentally.
I heard that maybe most of the time when our military guys, the pilots, tried to shut down to strike the UFOs, maybe 100% of these guys, they die.
No. What happens is, now the Soviet Union has lost more aircraft and had more people killed in trying to pursue and shoot down UFOs than any other country in the world. In this instance, I'm referring primarily to Russia. They had orders all the way up to the 1990s to shoot down UFOs. So when they would go ahead chase UFOs would take necessary action to cloak their craft to try to ensure that they didn't fall victim to our stupidity and our hostility. And of course we want to go ahead and shoot them down initially. And it was July 26, 1952. The order was given approximately 12 o'clock noon our time. By 5:30 that same afternoon, the order was withdrawn. But that same order was given to Soviet pilots, and it was never withdrawn. So they continued for years to try to close on UFOs and shoot the UFO down. The end result is that when and I don't know how to put it in any other terms I can understand, they would have a field go around the craft. When they had hit that field up, that field was so strong and extended several hundred feet beyond the UFO itself that it would actually cause a disintegration of any earthly craft that was close by, thus destroying the aircraft and even killing the people inside that aircraft. So yeah, there were casualties not intended to go ahead and kill, but they took the necessary precautions to ensure that their craft didn't get shot down. From time to time, they didn't take that precaution, and we had some UFOs that did get shot down. Because if they don't have that cloak, that field around them, then you hit them with certain weapons that we have, then it's going to shoot that craft down.
You was involved 12 cases for recovering of UFO crashes.
There were 12 cases in which I was involved in while I was in the military, involving the recovery of UFO crashes or debris thereof.
What kind of data you collected? I mean, not especially you, but your group. Usually when that happened, what kind
They
of
were
data?
interested. We were interested even in their garbage, and it wasn't to where everyone sat down at a table like this and we all talked about what each of us did. The intent was you were assigned specific duties. You would carry out those duties. In my case, if there were survivors or if there was things that I would sense out there in the field, then that would be part of my duties. Like, you know, if there were survivors, I was to have communication with them. If I sensed something, and I don't know how to put this, but, you know, like entities that may have been there and was still opening up, communicating with me, and I can't explain it because the situation, you know, the best way to put it is being, you know, like telepathy. And sometimes you'd pick up on things and you think this is like hearing voices, but no, it was different than that. Also, I had to deal with the NBC equipment, and I had to deal with the communication equipment. So it wasn't like I was out there just walking around with my hands in my pocket saying, well, I hear this voice, it's saying, I hear that voice. No, you had real things. Then, of course, the person who was always in charge, you know, we didn't know what rank he was, but I'd always call him the colonel. He would come over and ask me certain things. And
then you ask them.
Oh, yeah, well, sometimes they'd have what they call a field desk and a little chair where they'd set me down, and I was supposed to write down my feelings about things that dealt specifically with what was going on there. And I can remember one time I went ahead, and that time I smoked cigars. I got so bored trying to and they call this automatic writing nowadays. I didn't know what we were really doing, even why I was doing it at the time. But you get to the point where you want to know, so you start doing your own research on it. But I'm writing, and I get so bored because what do they want me to write? So I started playing some games of tic-tac-toe, a very intellectual game that there's no way, if you're really playing it right, there's no way you can win. But I went ahead, and I was playing it. And I just went ahead, took the paper, wadded it up, put it in my pocket. We had a GP medium tent, in which I was right in the center of it. And I had some of the Coleman lanterns. That's what we were using for light out there. I went out because it was dark, and there were 2 guards on the entrance of the tent that I was in. I went out, lit my cigar, and one of the people in charge, that wasn't the colonel this time, came over, knocked my cigar out of my mouth, and touched me on my pocket, and was cussing at me and everything else because I had that paper. All it was the games that I played, tic-tac-toe, but that was called classified waste. Made no difference. I took no paper in with me. I took no pens in with me. When I came out, I wasn't to have no pens with me. I wasn't to have no paper with me. The cigars that I had, they were King Edwards in a little box of 50. I had those with me. I didn't take them in with me. They were brought in for me because I knew I smoked cigars. When I left, I didn't take them with me. They were brought out for me. That's how much they were concerned about things getting out of there.